Joining me now from the foyer of the House of Commons, Adam Vaughan is the Parliamentary Secretary to the Prime Minister. Erin O'Toole is the Conservative Public Safety Critic, and Daniel Blakey is the NDP Treasury Board Critic. Nice to see you, gentlemen.
Good to be here.
Adam Vaughan, I'll start with you. So if CSEC is just realizing that our privacy wasn't fully protected within this metadata, not the content, again, just so people understand, but sort of the tracers in terms of maybe being able to identify where the information originated from, why are we just finding out about this now? And how is this impacting our relationship with Five Eyes countries, given that we can't share what we're supposed to be sharing with them?
So the reason we're finding out now is it is immediately upon being informed of this breach, the Minister tabled the report in the House of Commons and brought the information to Canadians to assure them of a couple of things. One, first of all, that the CSE itself discovered the breach and the contravention, and they took immediate action. And secondly, that the Minister is not going to allow this to move forward until he is completely satisfied that it won't happen again. If there's any comfort here, Canadians should know a couple of things. First of all, no identifiable information that allows individual identities or individual information has been transmitted. It is metadata, and it's a very complex phrase, but it's impossible to identify any particular person as a result of this breach. And the second thing is that steps are already being taken by our government to make sure that stronger civilian oversight is put in place so that when information like this is made known to public officials and that information is shareable with the public, it is immediately shared publicly, and if not that, it is divulged to parliamentarians so the appropriate action will be taken.
Okay, but how concerned is the government, though, with the fact that the CSE says they don't really have a timeline for when this can be fixed, so making sure that this kind of information can't get shared with our Five Eyes and with other countries that we share intelligence with, and that maybe we're, who knows how that relationship is going to deteriorate, given we haven't fixed it for 2 years, we don't know how long it's going to take.
We are in the process of fixing it, and that repair must be done to protect Canadian civil liberties, as we also make sure we protect public safety. But I think that the situation here is quite clear, that we are not going to compromise civil liberties at the expense of public safety, nor are we going to compromise public safety in a way that puts Canada at risk. However, our relationship with our allies is very clear. There are Canadian rules and regulations and laws in place that protect civil liberties, and our partners expect us to protect civil liberties as we also make sure we protect public safety. So we have been in full communication with our partners. We continue to cooperate on public safety, but we take this issue very seriously. That's why we reported, even though it happened a couple of years ago.
Okay, Erin O'Toole, as someone that was part of the previous government, why the big gap between this happening, and I should say that CBC did report on some of this stuff happening at the time, and then this being revealed and now shut down again by the government, and them saying, well, we're not going to share with anybody else because we're worried about this?
Well, this is an example, Rosie, of both organizations, the Commissioner for CSE and CERC, doing their jobs and doing it well, pointing out things that need to be fixed. On the CSE side, as Mr. Vaughan said, there was no personal information that was left in the metadata, but the stripping of metadata to ensure there is no personal information has become exceedingly complex. There's a volume of digital communications are out of this world, several different platforms. So I think CSE has been struggling to get the right solution to meet that commitment. In terms of the CERC report, they were looking into seeing whether the CRA information was an isolated incident, or was this something that happened regularly, and should management and the communications around that practice be halted. So I think they took the time to look to make sure, was this an isolated case with some tax information, or was this part of something that was happening on a recurring basis? That's exactly what the Security Intelligence Review Committee is meant to do. That's what the CSE Commissioner is meant to do. So this is a case where the government needs to take that. They've done their job, and the agencies incorporate that guidance. CSE is going to hit pause, it seems, until they get it right. That's probably appropriate. And CSIS will need to learn and have management practices to avoid isolated CRA cases turning into a recurring issue. So I think this is how our system works, and it worked properly.
Well, maybe, but it took 2 years for people to find out that this was happening. And in the case of the Revenue Agency, and I'll move on to you, Daniel Blakey, there was a promise that it would be rectified, and then they come back to check it, and it wasn't. So what does this do to people's confidence in these spy agencies and these security agencies if they have these problems with some basic things that they should be protecting?
Well, and I think that's the word, it's confidence. So this is really about, can Canadians trust in the organizations that they have to know that they're not just looking after their security, which is very important. I think we would all agree on that, but also respecting their privacy. So with the CSEC report, what I found interesting was that it was this week that we found out that the federal government opted not to conduct a national security review of the Allstream sale, and we were asking questions about this in the House today. The answer was, well, just trust us, it was all part of the package. But what we learned through the CSEC report is just how easy it is actually to pass on data, even inadvertently, even by our own agencies. So now we're going to have a U.S. firm handling a lot of sensitive data from the federal government and Canadians. If the Liberal government wants people to trust them, as they say, we need to, then I think they need to show more why it is exactly in their handling of this issues and others, like the Allstream sale, why exactly Canadians really should feel the kind of confidence that the government is asking.
Yeah, I think Daniel's raised a good point, Rosie. Really, the tabling in both these issues coming to the fore today. The NDP had some questions on these sales. We also know that Minister Goodale took a secret trip to the UK and has been lining up this new intelligence review committee.
Trip. How do you know?
David McGuinty, media unveiled that he didn't proactively, and he didn't invite opposition into this parliamentary intelligence committee he's talked about.
I'm not
sure
it was so secret, because he did come on this show and tell us he was going, and we had cameras with him and stuff. But I get,
the conflating.
That was a nice try. It was a nice try.
The conflating of these issues. The conflating of these issues does not clarify the situation. The situation is true. We need to build confidence in the security oversight and civilian oversight. And that's one of the reasons my colleague David McGuinty has been appointed to create a parliamentary review of this process so that we start to build that confidence. It is critical. We are not going to feel safe about our civil liberties or about our public safety if we don't believe the process works. But in this situation, breaches were found, breaches were reported, corrective action is being taken, and until the minister is satisfied that Canadian civil liberties and their public safety is totally secure, it's over.
And this is our intelligence oversight. So both of these watchdogs did their job, reported to Parliament issues that CSC and CSIS have to work on.
But
the government doesn't justify why they need to change the law.
Disclose this information. That's the question. Because in not disclosing it, it builds mistrust because we aren't operating in a transparent way. We aren't sharing
CERC
Canadians.
reports to Parliament, not to the government or the minister. So CERC's reporting schedule and their investigation on CRA was operating exactly how it's intended.
But Mr. O'Toole, do you think it's normal or acceptable that something that was flagged 2 years ago, then and CSIS was told to destroy a database or information, they go back and check and find out, oh, wait, it's still on our database? That's a bit troublesome, is it not?
I agree, Rosie, and that's why I think the best part of the CERC report was they didn't just look at one isolated case. They wanted to see management practices around the uncovering of these improper actions and to make sure that they weren't, it wasn't just an isolated, and that this information was not held. So I think they looked at it.
If I can jump in, what I would say is, this is why we need the Inspector General of CSIS back. So that was a position that the Conservatives got rid of. It's a position that provided real-time oversight of operations. So part of the problem is with the SIRC, even if it does its job well, it's always retroactively. It's always looking back on what's happened. And it's why we need an office, as we once had, that's actually proactively reviewing the work of CSIS as it's happening, so that you don't have a 2-year period.
So let me end on Adam Vaughan. And from what you understand, and I realize you're trying to figure out how this parliamentary all-party committee would work, would it be able to know 2 years before something has happened? Would it have that kind of ability to catch these mistakes that these agencies are making as they're happening, or at least a little sooner than this?
I can't answer that question in the specific way you phrased it. What I can assure Canadians and you and the public through you is that civilian oversight and real-time oversight is paramount. It builds not only does it build safeguards that protect our civil liberties, it also makes us more effective at protecting public safety. And I think what we've seen over the last 2 years is a secretive approach, and I would argue a lax approach. I think the minister had responsibilities in the previous government to act in a public way to build that confidence.
Okay,
this is now changing, and we're working with our colleagues in Parliament to make sure we get the oversight right and this public safety regime.
I'll let Aaron O'Toole have 20 seconds there. Aaron O'Toole.
Listen, Rosie, these reports are retrospective. They look at what's happened over the last couple of years and recommend corrective action to Parliament. That's who CERC reports to. What the minister has not done is said why politicians would be better at doing this on a real-time basis. As my colleagues are saying, David McGuinty is not going to become a spy himself. How could a parliamentary committee do this
would
better?
not be a politician. So when we talk about real-time oversight, that's not the role of the parliamentary committee. That would be the role of the
It's a much easier way to answer that question. Civilian oversight is the cornerstone of strong and appropriate public safety. And without appropriate civilian oversight, none of us have confidence in a democratic system. At the end of the day, civilian oversight is paramount in a democratic system. We're working very hard to make sure Parliament fulfills those duties.
Okay, I'm going to leave it there, gentlemen. This panel was not held in hiding. This was no secret. Everybody knew you were here, just so you know, Aaron O'Toole. Adam Vaughn, Aaron O'Toole, Daniel Blakey. Thank you all for being here publicly. Appreciate it.